Page 144, problem number 23. Find all the zeros of the function and write the polynomial as a product of linear factors. Graph the function. So we're asked to do a number of different things. First, find the zeros. That means find the numbers we can plug in here to make this equal 0. Since we have t cubed, we expect to have 3 zeros. Second, write the polynomial as a product of linear factors. That means we need to factor this. We're going to have t minus something, t plus something, etc., etc. Finally, we need to graph this function. So let's start by finding some of these zeros here. Now, the zeros are the numbers we can plug in here to make this function equal 0. Now, there's only certain numbers that work. The numbers that work are the factors of this last term divided by the factors of this first term. And they can be positive or negative. So over here, I'm just going to write t equals, and let's just make a list of all our possible zeros. Well, factors of 125 are numbers like 1, 5, 25, and 125. And I should probably in front of this put plus or minus, because these factors could be positive or negative. All over factors of this number right here. Well, the number in front of t cubed is 1. That's convenient. We're not going to have any factors like 1/2, 1/3. All our factors are going to be these numbers like 1, 5, 25, 125, positive or negative. Now we have to find one that works. So what we have to do is test these numbers out by plugging them in here in place of t. If I put 1 in place of t, 1 cubed is 1, minus 3 times 1 squared, so 1 minus 3 is negative 2, minus 15 times 1 is negative 15, plus 125, that doesn't equal 0, so 1 is not 0. Let's try negative 1. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1, negative 1 squared is 1 times negative 3, 15 times negative 1 is 15. If I add all that, still doesn't equal 0. So 1 and negative 1 don't work. Let's try 5. 5 cubed, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125, minus 3 times 5 squared, so 125 minus 75. I better write this down. 125 minus 75 minus 15 times t. 15 times t, I believe, is 75 plus 125. That doesn't equal 0, so 5 doesn't work. Let me get rid of my work there. Maybe negative 5 will work. I'm hoping one of these numbers works soon. So negative 5. Negative 5 cubed is negative 125. Negative 5 squared is 25 times minus 3, so that's minus 75. Negative 15 times negative 5 is plus 75. And then plus 125. That equals 0. So that tells me negative 5 is a 0. So my zeros, I'm going to write down here, t equals, let's put our first 0 in there. The first 0 that worked that we found was negative 5, comma. Now we expect 3 zeros here. Let's see if we can find all 3. So now, since negative 5 is a 0, that means that I'm going to factor this. Let's see here. So f of t equals, since negative 5 was a 0, that means x plus 5 is a factor. It's going to be times something else. We should have 2 more factors here. So let's see here. What I want to do is divide this. I wrote x there. I should have wrote t. My apologies. We'll change that. So back to where I was. Since t minus 5 is a factor. Whoops. T plus 5. I'm messing up left and right on those factors. Okay, t plus 5 is a factor because negative 5 is a 0. That means if I divide this by t plus 5, I'll find out t plus 5 times something else equals this expression. So let's do that. Let's use synthetic division. So I'm going to put negative 5 outside. I'm going to put my coefficients right here. And remember to use synthetic division. I can add down, multiply diagonally, and hopefully we get 0 as a remainder. So adding down is 1, multiply diagonally. Adding down, multiply diagonally. Add down, multiply diagonally. This is a good sign. We get a remainder of 0. That's a good thing. So that means f of t is equal to t plus 5 times t squared minus 8t plus 25. Now at this point there's a few different things we can do. We can plug in more values to see if we can find something that'll make this equal to 0. We can try to factor this by hand. I'll tell you what though, the possible zeros are factors of 25 over factors of 1. So 1, -1, 5, -5, 25, and -5 are all possible. 1 and -1 won't work because they didn't work the first time. They're not going to work now. 5 is not going to work. -5, do a quick check, that won't work. 25, -25, that won't work. So we have no more real zeros. But we could have complex zeros with imaginary numbers. So we're going to have to use our quadratic formula. Now normally it's x equals, but in this case t equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug in these coefficients for a, b, and c. So t is going to be equal to 8 plus or minus the square root of -8 squared, which is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 25, which is 100, all over 2 times 1. So let's see, that's going to be equal to 8 plus or minus the square root of -36, all over 2. But we can't find the square root of -36, at least not with a real number. It's going to be an imaginary number. Square root of 36 would be 6. Square root of -36 is 6i. So this is 8 plus or minus 6i all over 2, which I can write as 4 plus or minus 3i. If I divide both parts by 2, 4 plus or minus 3i. So there's my two missing zeros. So 4 plus 3i and 4 minus 3i. So I've got my 3 zeros. I should also write this in factored form. So let's see here. I'm just going to write it over here so I have room. So that's equal to t plus 5, can't forget about that one, times t minus 4 plus 3i times t minus 4 minus 3i. So now I've got my zeros, first part of my problem. I wrote the polynomial as a product of linear factors, factored it, second part. Now graph. Now the graph's going to be a little tricky. First of all, -5 is a 0. That means on the x-axis at -5, our graph goes through here. There's a 0. We also know 125 is the y-intercept. So way up here somewhere is a y-intercept. I also know because it's a positive value times t cubed, my graph starts down here, comes up, curves somehow, and continues forever. I'm going to get my graphing calculator out. Let's use that as a tool to see what this graph looks like. So I'll press y equals, we'll type in x to the third minus 3x squared minus 15x plus 125. And I'll press my graph key. Well, there's my 0 that we expected. We can't see any more of the graph, so actually this graph comes up here, does something, goes on forever. I'm just going to press my zoom key, and let's zoom out to see if we can get a better idea, and then enter, of what this function does. Still can't see it very well. Let's see if we can get a better idea. If this doesn't work, we'll just go with what we have. Still no good idea. So it's doing something up here. We don't know exactly what, but we'll just leave it as is.